Second day of Chodesh Iyar. Kunlan about Gemara. Today's daf is daf Chaf Aleph, and we are up to the Mishnah. And we're continuing Eilehein Aloikin. We're not going through every single Aveda that you get Malkus for, but we are highlighting every Aveda where there's some Chiddush, and you get Malkus. So that says the Mishnah. Now we're going to talk about, we talked about shaving and removing the payas and all that. Now we're going to continue in that pasuk that talks about harming yourself or cutting yourself, mourning, you're not allowed to rip into yourself. And now we're going to talk about tattoos. Says the Mishnah, if somebody goes ahead and writes a tattoo, now there are two stages in producing a tattoo. So basically, there's a machlekes rishonim how to translate the words ksayvis and kaka. According to the Rivan here or Rashi, whoever it is, because as you see, I told you yesterday how many of the Achronim quoted as Rashi. In fact, the Bach keeps on quoting it as Rashi, which means in their Gemaras clearly was Rashi, not Rivan. Our Gemara says Rivan, but we mentioned a problem. Kubo Basra, it says he passed away the same day. So what happened? But anyway, according to the Rivan and other Rishonim, Ksayvis means writing, and kaka means to etch inside. So there's two stages. And other Rishonim hold pumpaket, that kaiser means to etching and kaka means to write. And because basically what they do is you make an incision in the hand with this needle. And so you have the epidermis, which is the outer layer, and then you have the dermis, which is the inner layer. And the whole idea is that the ink should go beyond the epidermis because that sheds all the time and that can, will disappear after a while, and to get into the dermis. And there it stays forever, or almost forever. And today there are methods where you can actually remove it, extremely costly and extremely painful. But that's what it is. That's called a permanent kind of etching. So hakoysev, if you're right, ksayv is kaka, if you do this tattoo, what happens if kosav v'loy kaka? You just wrote, but you did not etch it in, but you wrote in a permanent way. Or kaka v'loy kosav, or you made the needle, whatever the letters are, but you didn't actually fill it with ink. You're not chayiv malkus, but you're either still chayiv mahatoida or midrabana, different opinions. Until you write and you makaka. What's the iser of tattoo? Why should tattoo be iser? So some say there's a kosev. That's what it is. In fact, you won't use that lotion. Others say the Rambam because of Avodah Zarah. It used to be. In fact, when I was in Thailand and I went by one of these tattoo shops and a tattoo museum, and they would tell me that this was showing which god you were following, and they would put it on your hand, and so that's why it's also al Avodah Zarah. Others say the pasuk there talks about for the dead. They used to put some money on them to remember the dead, and it says in one of the Rilech, I can't remember who it is. Remember him saying here that the problem then is, what's the problem? If you don't do Avodah Zarah, and all you're doing is you want to remember the person who died, what's wrong with that? So he said the problem is that means you don't believe it's Chesed Mason. Because the person will be back. What do you need to put it on your hand for? And that's the problem. Chesed Mason. Interesting. Don't know where he gets it from, but it's from the early Achronim. That's the basis for the Isra. Big machlekes and Achronim. What happens if is it dafka writing? So first of all, if it's writing, Shabbos, to be considered writing, you need two letters. Over here also, you have to write two letters or two numbers or even one. Some want to say the same thing. That it'd be chayiv mahatoida, malchus, or even to be chayiv mahatoida, it's only if you did a minimum of two letters. Oh, we'll get that in a second. According to them, for sure, it's mutter, or it's not also mahatoida, or not, you don't get malchus. Others say no. Shabbos is because we learned from the Mishkan they used to write letters on every one of the what do you call it? Of the amudim. So you needed two letters to have two together, but everywhere else one letter is considered writing. Then the question is, what about not writing? What about pictures? Is pictures considered a tattoo? So I will soon tell you to bring it out. But big machlekes, but there has to be the Piskei Tosfos clearly right here. I'll quote you Piskei Tosfos right here on this Gemara right here. The Piskei Tosfos says, "Shemesare besari besakin." Yeah, you use a knife to cut into you. Ke'ein oisios. It has to be letters, and it says it in plural. So we learn two things from Tosfos: only letters and only two, minimum of two. So if you just did pictures according to Tosfos, it's not a chiva malchus. Some said not chiva ha'toida. questionable what's also Rabbanon. Because what about Chatzishir? If I had one letter, for example, even the whole two letters, but one letter. So there they say that, well, it depends. The Chacham Tzvi says there's no Chatzishir only by food. So because Achshavei, then it's not anyway. So get involved in many other areas of halach. And Tais includes also lasakach shum ksiva. It's only letters. But others say, from the Rambam and others, if you look, the interesting is that Shulchan Aruch is the most vague. There's no halach. There's a few sifrim here. Doesn't get involved whether it's a picture, whether it's writing, how many letters, which means it seems pashut pshat. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Ad kedei kach. That Minchas Chinuch says that those poskim that hold that his pictures are good enough. It has to be a picture. It has to be, something, a message. But if you just make a line, which is not a letter, not a picture, stop. You want to. They all say it's mutter. And he says, why should we mutter? You did srita, and you did with ink. Why? Because if you learn Pashup Pshat Shulchan Aruch, there are no rules there as to what you did. Just ink and etching. Machlekes poskim whether it makes a difference. The Shach Pasuk clearly makes no difference which order you did it. Others want to say, depending on Machlekes Rishonim, what it is. Okay. Sorry, have to mission. Then English continues. Until you go ahead and you etch in your hand, it has to be permanent. Those who hold, what happened? You only did one. Definitely awesome with the Rabbanon. Okay, a big controversy. You're allowed to go to an amusement park where they put a stamp on your hand, and it's on your hand. And if you hold that ksiva without kak is also awesome with the Rabbanon, how can you do that? So the general consensus is that even if it's also ksiva without kaka, at least it has to be davar miskayim. These things after 24 hours they fade away, or washes off. They fade away easily. Washing off is you have to do a pull, but it fades away on its own. Even it's not davar miskayim. Washing off, you did a pull to counteract it. Doesn't help. If I make a tattoo and then tomorrow I go ahead and I go to these places that remove the tattoo, that doesn't help. You still did your Aveda. A big controversy started, and this is where it all started in America. There was a show on TV, and I forgot the name of the show, but it was written by a Yid, and the actor was a Yid, and the show was talking about over there that this person who became about Tshuva or something had tattoos. He said, be aware that they're not going to bury you in the chelka of the Yidden. People with tattoos are buried with those who embrace Christianity. Can be a controversy. I don't know if you remember this. This is in the 70s, in the 80s, maybe. That's where it comes from. Only that place. Well, there's somebody that doesn't eat kosher, so that's where he came up with the idea. It became a big controversy, and the Summer Rabbanim actually came out and supported it. There is a big controversy as well, after that show as well. Would you be makabel a ger if they're full of tattoos? That's an Aveda that can never, chutzpah davar echad, or even if for him, he's walking in with you. Others say the Aveda happened already. It's not like, but now he's a Yid, and now what happens now is a Yid. Every second that you don't undo, or so see the Gemara, any Aveda that you could undo and you don't undo, it's as if you did the Aveda right now. According to
now you have this.
I think 20, 30 years ago you could have done it as well. I'm talking about this show was only 20, 30 years ago when this controversy started. Anyway, I'm sure that Batadin that will not accept such a get if they see it visible on the face or on the neck and they would not. Anyway, everyone has their own policies. Let's continue. Anything that is permanent. There's a whole movement of people to go ahead and tattoo the Auschwitz numbers that their grandmother or grandfather had in camp to a line. I don't know if you heard about this. This is in the last 20 years. The kids, they want to. And then the question is that a problem or not? I'll show you an interesting thing in the Gemara here. Maybe it's not a problem. I'll see. Rabbi Shimon Yehuda says you're not chayiv unless you actually put a Shem Hashem. Right now the Gemara thinks it means the Eibish's name. So see it means Avodah Zarah. In other words, it sounds like could you put Hashem's name? Then we had no problem with Chatzitza, remember other Gemaras, and so on. Says the Gemara, does he mean that literally? You got to write this pasuk Ani Hashem in order to be chayiv for tattooing. Like you're talking about kapara, ain't chayiv about shita Shem always gachal b'avodah zarah. But it says Ani Hashem. So according to Rabbi Shimon Yehuda, clearly the Easter of Kshavas Kaka is only because of avodah zarah. The question is according to Chachamim who don't hold this is because they agree it's avodah zarah, but it's not important, or they just disagree. Now this Gemara we have a few times, And this shows how the Gemara was working so hard to be able to remember, not even to mistake a name. Forget about mistaking the content, the name. There's two Amoraim. One's called Malkaya, and one was called Malkayoy. One is more feminine. Malkayo sounds feminine, a princess. And one is Malkayoy, sounds male. And they both said dinim. And how in the world are we going to remember who said what? Now you would say it was minus community. It's Malkayo or Malkayoy. But you have to remember the names as well. I remember Mel Tzibel the whole night once for bringing for with us. We're doing Bob Metzia. Lema de like bananas. He walked around the table. You care if it is bananas or not bananas? The Gemara starts the first mission of Bob Metzia.
You ask anyone, what is bananas like?
Anyway. Put ashes on your makkah. The kaka looks like a tattoo, but the ashes then burns into your skin. Hot ashes, hot cold. It burns into your skin. It's some kind of a trufa, and therefore it's a problem. The Gemara later on we'll see in a minute. Okay. Now we'll digress a minute. So who said this? Who said this? Malkaya. Now we got to remember. So Shapud, the laws regarding the Shapud, the spit that you use for carbon pesach is muksa and all that you have to therefore set it aside. It's a mission. But you have to put it aside, and he says, yeah, you can put it, and Malkaya comes along and says that you can put it in the corner through Chiltov de Atzad. You use something else, use a shoe and push it to the side. That's the part that he adds. And shvachas, we're having more of them in Afalpi. The obligations of a woman to her husband. What happened? They have 100 shvachas. They still say that Allah like a Shimon that she still has to do something because Batola maybe if you don't do anything. Yeah, and gumais, when we say shtei side, it doesn't necessarily mean here. Even if you have the follicles, if you have the hole with that's good enough. You have two holes. You can see the hair used to be there. That's a good simon. That's Rav Malkayoy. And Beluris regarding a barber, you can cut for a guy, and he likes a haircut in the middle. The Beluris leaves the middle of the head, a lump of hair. You should keep away a certain distance from that hair, otherwise you're being you're messiah in the guy being even a better Beluris, which is like a better because that's what they did for worship their idols. And really, Beluris a for mikla, the Dimi just said right now, which is a for mikla, putting it on the wound. And the gevina, why can't you use gevina sakum? And the different reasons given. And one of the reasons it gives it because they smear it on top on the surface with fats. That's a malkaya. Okay, 3 and 3. Papa masisa masita rab malkaya. No, anything to do with the Mishnah, but I said that's a malkaya, and shmait which is the halacha, that's a malkayoi. And because the Chachamim Malki Rabbana, they come up with new halachas, and b'simonach masnita malkasa. And what I remember is the brises. That's the malkasa. Malchaya sounds more like even though I just told you differently, but Malchaya sounds more like a king. My benai, what's the difference? Then the argument is Ike who said shvachas? Who said shvachas? Because you mentioned first shvachas is Malkayoi, but shvachas is it could be mentioned is a machlekes where shvachas fits in. So we have a machlekes now in how to remember these things, and who said what. Anyway, that people will be so careful that he was makbid, even if a wound that you don't know, use as something that made a wound on you, scalded yourself, you have to be careful to put ashes. No, I disagree. It's clearly obvious. Why are you putting the coal there? Not because of a tattoo. You're doing it as a therapy. Then it's not a problem. I eventually the wound will heal, but you'll still see the zeicher, the black coal that made it. Oh, he says there's a permanent sign of the wound as well. So from here they want to bring a raya. Had it not been for Mechir Chalav, it would be Asa. So they bring it right to me that pictures are Asa. Pictures are Asa. Others say, those who hold that only letters are Asa, talking about that the wound is shaped like a letter. Everything's so far-fetched. So the wound is shaped like a letter. So when you put the coal on it, and you made the coal exactly like the wound, so it's a letter. I mean, it's pretty far-fetched, but that's how they want them shot. But what is another thing from here is, if it's clearly you're doing it not because it's a tattoo, you're doing it for another reason, not for avodah zarah or anything else. So here's therapy. What happens in the case of Auschwitz? You're doing it to I don't know, associate yourself with what your grandparents. No, not people Auschwitz. You, the grandchildren. So you're not doing it for the shame tattoo. You're doing it for where would that fall in? Where would that fall? Mechiyah chalav, that you're not doing it time for fun, or you're doing it for avodah zarah, or doing it for the other possible reasons. You're doing it for, I don't know. I don't know if you can maybe argue that. Okay, next Mishnah. Another, we have three cases in, and I want to talk about why you need three cases. Another drank we already had before. Another drank all day long. Ain't chayv alachas. Another drink water vs wine. He drank many of these, one malchus. He told him not drink, and he kept drinking. You chayv each one. Basically, I mean, we went each year. After every asra, he drank again, so you have to therefore chayv. Why aren't you chayv if you gave one asra for the whole day? Somebody's trying to say, because you forgot. Remember, we learned Ishtule, that after a few seconds, you forgot. And others say that all the drinking is still like one, because the Hasra is what creates the Aveda. You ate one Hasra, it's one long Aveda. Remember I told you last time, what's the Hasra? Hasra creates the Aveda, Hasra just reflects the Aveda. If it reflects the Aveda, so why aren't you Chai 5 times? Because you forgot. If it makes the Aveda, then you only make one Hasra, one Aveda, one Malchus. It creates the Malchus, one Malchus. He was standing on Noses now become Tamne. He all day long. He stood there in the Chayv He said a number of times, Al Titma, he's Chayv. A third case, which all the same thing. And the Chayim trying to figure out why do you need three different dinim, which are all exactly the same principle, the same Nazir. What's the difference? And each one is considered a more Chamadika one, because each one cancels the Naziris and so on. In the Chayv one, each one. You're wearing climb all day long. Ain't the Chayv once. Al tilbish, will push the lavish, you take off and on, take off and on. Chayv kalach. Here you chayv for each one, take it off and take it on, you chayv each one. Okay, traces the truth of Yazayin there, which talks about them. Nazir, very interesting. Why are you? If you okay, we'll talk about some. Talking about it further. Now the Gemara comes up with an idea that you did one ma'isa and you get. We had already before achol patisa achol namalo. Now we're having you did one aveda, one ma'isa, and you'll be getting many lav. Yes, chodesh. Tell them that sometimes you can plow one furrow, one row of whatever plant. The chayiv olam shu shmoyne lavin. I can conceive 8 avedas. First of all, you did a cow and a donkey that climb. The Mugdoshin, and they were hegdish. You're not allowed to use. You're not allowed to use hegdish. Why were they hegdish? For example, it's a b'chayr, right? The Gemara says we're talking about a b'chayr, and b'chayr, if it's a b'chayr, sure, okay, you're not allowed to work with it. What about a pet by a chamar? What's the issue over there? So someone says because asa b'hana. Others say, "Oh, no, so what? Why do you get malchus for that?" So others want to say, even though we say the word chamor, because that's what the pasuk says, we're actually not talking about chamor, we're talking about a seh. Big machlek is a shaynin, the Rambam and others. If you use 2 kosher animals or 2 same treifa animals, is it a climb hatoid or not? The Rivan over here clearly says Shor Chamor is climb hatoid, so we learned the long Rabban here. But the Rambam clearly says only with the Rabbanon. So he learns like those who learn that it's really a seh. Sorry. Shor Chamor definitely is climb because one is kosher, one is treif. And those who want to learn that's a shor and a seh, the Rambam can learn that way, and others who learn like Rambam can learn that way because that's 2 kosher animals. There's no climb by 2 kosher animals. So then you have to work out what's the chamor. Then they belong to Hagish. Okay, uklayim. It happens to be climb bekedem. What you're planting or you're plowing is climb bekedem. Even though we'll see later, climb you don't get malchus. For chodesh, for plowing, you don't get malchus. Chodesh means that the sand, you dug up sand, and the sand now covers the seeds, and that's like planting. So it's reya, not chodesh. Ubishvis happens to be Shemitah year, and it's Yom Tov. Now everyone asks, ain't Isa chalalisa? One Isa cannot fall on top of another. How can you have all these assured? So, especially, like Shui is in Yom Tov. If it's Shemitah already, Yom Tov doesn't come out to Shemitah. So they answer talking about it's Rosh Hashanah. So Shemitah and Yom Tov came at the same moment. Then they talk about 30 days before you're not allowed to plow. Unless this is one of the cases which is an exception, or there's no malchus. The kohen, you're a kohen and a nazir. How? Then they'll try to work out how can you be a kohen and a nazir? How can you be a kohen and a nazir? So if you hold Yisa Moisiv and Yisa Koil, which we'll learn tomorrow, okay. But our Gemara says they don't hold like that. So they want to say that, for example, your father took on the zitters for you, so you don't become a nazir till you're by mitzvah. And you're a kohen, you don't have the position of a kohen till you're by mitzvah. So they both come in tandem. The basic to me, you're a basic verse. All of these are various. If you walk climb, if you're wearing climb while you're doing all this work, I found another Aveda. You're trying to compound Aveda, they got more. This is different. We're talking about the Aveda to do with working, and you're talking about the guy what he's wearing. A Nazir, and being a Nazir or a Kohen, that's not working, that's a side issue. Loihu Hashem. That's also not talking about right. I feel even if you just put your hand in and out every time you get hasra, you get malchus. Physically, you have to do a ma'isa. The Rashi is no. I feel loy shaw. Okay, they live even you did not do a ma'isa. You stood there, but you're long enough. You could have taken it off and put it back on. You're chayiv malchus. Everybody asks. So lav shem a ma'isa. Okay, the first time you put it on, but that's it. So Tais and Shuas gives an answer that the first Maisa that you did continues. So the Machlekes Shem, how does that Tais? Is the Pshat, the fact that you did nothing is as if you put it on? Is that what Tais is saying is? As if that's a Maisa, that's a big Kiddush? Or the Pshat is, since the only way it came onto you in the first place was through a Maisa, and since you could have taken it off, that original Maisa continues as if, like a Pulim Sheches, continues all the way. Okay. Yes, we decided like that by klayim, if it's only planting, that's also. But if you're covering with sand, it's also you get malchus. It says yes, you can plow one row. And we just learned on top of the page. A donkey, a cow, and the kodesh reclaim the kedem. High chodesh of chaim from climb. It says that you were chodesh, you were plowing, and you're chayiv for climb. Plowing, we know that you're not chayiv plowing. Shemitah, there's a machlekes Rabbi Yechon had my cut in the beginning. Rabbi Yechon is lucky by shemitah whether plowing is an aveda or not. But by climb, plowing is an aveda, is planting. Now is a climb. It must be talking about that while you're walking and plowing, the sand is covering the seeds, and that's so we rain over the Mishnah Klar. So what's your chiddush? That's what so that's Rabbi Yechon's question to Rabbi Yanai. On Malay, so Rabbi Yanai said to him the famous word, if I wouldn't have lifted the lid, the clay lid, me mishkachas maganisa tusa, you think you would have known? You would have found the diamond underneath it? No. You would not have found it down. You would not have found the diamond underneath it. In other words, I point you in the right direction. Now you're telling me that's exactly what I want you to do. Figure out Pshat the Mishnah. I highlighted it. If you wouldn't have praised this great man, he wouldn't have praised you. I would have said, I would say, this Mishnah is no raya, because I can say that the Mishnah follows Rabbi Kiva. I'm a climb like it. He taka hold. You don't need to plant, even if you're just allowing it to exist. You're ready to get malchus. That's how we learn the Mishnah. Rabbi Yana is a big chiddush. Which is this? The time when or somebody weeds, or by climb, you're covering over the sun. Like you get malchus, right? You have to do pull it. It says, says, even just sitting there, every time you have an opportunity to pull it out, and you don't pull it out, you're chayiv. And maybe that's not the Mishnah. By chodesh, you're chodesh, you walk by the seeds, you couldn't pull the seeds out, and you didn't. So you're chayiv not. You're chayiv not because we treat it as the sand goes on as zir, because you left it there. My time, Rabbi Kiva, how does he know that? Time says the pasuk, tzadcha. When you're there, I guess, when you're able to. But you're there, you're plowing right around there. So it says pasuk, tzadcha lo climb. It says you shouldn't plant climb. And then it says, it says, why does it say tzadcha? Sadcha, it sounds like for me that just your field alone, and even just being in your field is already, and you're able to remove it is already considered yechayev. Now, what you didn't pull it out, the fact that you didn't pull it out, is already make you chayev. Now the more asks, there's more Vedas I can. You were looking for Vedas. You can add more, for example, just for what you did. The look at Yamtiv, you planted on Yamtiv. Why are we not? You plowed on Yom Tov, but you also planted because we just said you covered the sand, so that's planting. So as far as climb, we consider planting. New Yom Tov is planting. Add. You're right. Just cut every Aveda. It says clearly 8 Avedas. The Mishnah said, and you tell me that the Mishnah meant more. So yeah. So what's the point telling us? Rabba wants to say, Yesh chilik malachas b'Shabbos, the ain chilik malacha b'Yom Tov. On Shabbos, every malacha is a separate thing. We have the pasuk shari, we have the psukim we learn. Oh, it's the varoish. But on Yom Tov, no matter how many malachas you did, you only bring. There's no chilik malachas. You bring only one carbon if you did it b'shagig. Says in Gemara. What do you call it? Amalei, Adat, hey, good on you. Eitel, that's a question. Eitel, bye is a question. You tell me, ain't chil malach miyantav, there's no chil malachas. Let me ask you how you learned Shalit. Nah, we learned in the Mefedish Mishnah, it says, we had this in Beya. I'm a vashel gid, you cook the gid hanosha. If you hold yesh begid in a nice and tam, that there is considered like there's meat there. So there's a tam there, it's like, and you cook with milk. You're not allowed to cook 3 times a vashel one, you're not allowed to cook. On Yom Tov. So cooked on Yom Tov, something you cannot eat. You're only allowed to eat lechem nefesh. But and you ate it. How many Vedas you do? It says in Loika Chamish. What are the 5 Vedas? Loika Mishum Eichel Gid, you ate Gid Nasha. The Loika Mishum Avashal B'Yom Tov Shalei L'Tzedek, you cooked L'Tzedek. So there's 2 of them here. So eating a Gid and cooking a Yom Tov. The Loika Mishum Avashal Gid B'Cholov, you cooked in milk. And so you ate the gid, and now you're cooking milk. And when you eat the gid, you did 2 avedas in the eating. Gid, you're not allowed to eat again, and basar b'chalov. And the loik, and you get malchus mishum havara. You also lit a fire. Now, according to you, the 2 avedas for Yom Tov, lighting a fire and cooking what you don't need. But you just said there's no chilik malachas. We're talking about over there. All of them, when we say 5, we're talking about say b'shegig, you get you bring 5 korban chatayis. So you did behelam echad. So l'chayda, you just said that ain't chilik malachas by Yom Tov. So habishul and havara can't be 2 avedas. That's Abayi's question to Rabbi. So what'd you say?
Then it was impossible. Why don't they
Okay, I don't know. Okay. The imisa, I don't know. Imisa, the question. Imisa, mishum havara lemechaye. The chaye mishum b'shil. If you're right, you shouldn't be chaye there. So Gemara says you're right. A big havara, take out havara. You're not going to be chaye v'chatos for that. And the ayil gid hanosha shel nevela. It happens to be a gid hanosha of nevela. So therefore, the 5th of 8 is that what you ate in nevela. Gid hanosha, basar b'chalov, and nevela. But Tanya Rabchia, what do you mean? Rabchia says when he summarizes Mishnah, he said Loikish time al chilasik. You get 2 avedas for eating, basar b'chalov and gid. But according to you, the 3rd one, nevela. B'shalosh abishul. He says shalosh al chilasik he'll chayiv. You know what it says? Apik havara, take out fire. Va'ayil atzasheda, put in there. Atzeh asheda. You used wood from avodah zarah, and that's also. Where's there a lot for that? It says in the pasuk that nothing should be left in your hand from avodah zarah. So therefore, that's the 5th of lav. If you are telling me already that betum avodah zarah, then you should also get punished for using them not only for lighting that session, but for bringing it into your house. It's a shakat shakten and all that. So there's another law. You use wood from hegdish, so there's only one of it. There's no use to bring it into your house, but you're not allowed to use it. Burning, you should burn but don't burn things that belong to hegdish, including the firewood for your own use. And that's where the 5 avedas are. Continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem. Have a good Chodesh, everybody.
Yep.